Hey guys, Dr. Mike Israel here from Renaissance Periodization and Juggernaut Training Systems. I'm going to talk to you guys today about constantly testing your 1 rep max when involved in a sport like weightlifting or powerlifting or just strength training in general. So what do we mean by, too often, constantly? It means you're 1RM testing in one of 3 conditions. 1, you test it weekly, hopefully not daily. This isn't high school. If you're testing it daily, stop, by the way. Weekly 1RM testing, monthly or every mesocycle, 1 repetition max testing, or even just testing it outside of a peaking phase or outside of a competition setting has some definite downfalls. And we here at Juggernaut and Renaissance think that might be a little bit of a downside. So, of course, there's a downside, but there's an upside as well. So let's talk about the upside, or more or less, why do people do 1 rep max testing? Well, first of all, it gauges your preparedness. If you're a strength athlete, you don't know how strong you are, that can be a little bit unsettling. So you kind of want to know, well, listen, is my program working? How are things going? Am I prepared? Am I good to go? Should I make any changes? You do a 1 rep max, you're going to quickly find out a lot of that information to some extent, or at least you're trying to find out that information as opposed to staying willfully ignorant and thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm sure I'm getting stronger, everything's fine. In that related sense, it keeps the program honest. But if your 1RMs are stable or going up, things are going well. If your 1RMs are falling, maybe things aren't going according to plan. Now, there are ways in which they are, or could be, but certainly if you do 1RMs, it's easier to keep your program honest in that regard. As far as training is concerned, you think, well, it's a waste of time to train like that. Well, training's very specific. Like if your goal is to be as strong for 1 repetition as possible, doing 1 repetition max in training is very specific, so it's not terrible training. It could be very good training, especially at certain times. And probably the biggest reason people do it is it's very motivational, right? You hit a new PR, and all these questions about, do I have to trust the process? Is my program working? I mean, all these questions go out the window, right? You feel amazing. You're like, oh my God, it's working, I'm doing it. And in another sense, it's motivational. If you're hitting your 1RMs, but you're not getting any better, it can be very motivational. If you've been slacking, you're like, man, I gotta start eating better, I gotta start sleeping better. Forget this, I need to get better. I can't afford to just not get stronger because, you can get complacent in a program. So it can be motivational in that regard. That's why a lot of people do it. Problems. Some serious problems with 1RM testing, which is why we're kind of saying it's a little bit of a not a good idea to do constant 1RM testing all the time. So here are the trade-offs. During high volume phases, you're using slightly different derivatives of different exercises, or you're using the same movements but with higher repetitions, or a combination of both. You're going to have a whole lot of volume and a whole lot of fatigue due to that. And your nervous system is going to be off in its ability to exert its force. In one way, exactly what is it that you're measuring when you're doing 1RM tests? To use a very extreme analogy, if you're building a multi-stage rocket from different components, and when you finish it, the rocket's ready to fire, do you try to test the rocket at every single stage? Well, that's nonsense. The stages don't even work by themselves. So if you're using a hypertrophy phase to build muscle, the nervous system changes during that time actually make you temporarily weaker, but better at doing reps, and your muscles are growing. And remember, you keep your muscles after to make them stronger later with the nervous system changes. So if you test your 1RM at the end of a hypertrophy block, what is it telling you? You're not as strong. Okay, does the program not work? Well, hold on. We were trying to get bigger, not stronger. So you're using the wrong test. So testing your 1RM all the time, especially at inappropriate phases, just doesn't make any damn sense when you really, really think about it. But it comes with extra problems. 1RM testing is fatiguing. There's extra fatigue, and the benefit is very unclear. Now, I said earlier that the benefit is that it's specific training. But how about this? If you're in a hypertrophy phase, right? Is 1RM testing, 1 repetition max lifting, specific to generating hypertrophy? No, not really. Does it cause a lot of fatigue? Yes. Does it cause another problem of opportunity cost? Things you could have done with that fatigue? If you just wipe that fatigue away, instead of 1RMing, you would have done a couple more sets of 5, or a couple more sets of 8, you would have gotten more muscle, you'd have gotten stronger without wasting that time on testing all the damn time. So when we say that there's extra fatigue and very little benefit, there could be a high benefit if it's close to your peaking phase, but outside of your peaking for general strength or hypertrophy, there's really no real good, it's just not good for your training to do that, and there's better uses of your time. And of course, last but not least is injury risk. We all know that 1RMs carry with them inherent risk of injury. There's a reason why bodybuilders almost never do 1 repetition maxes. It's just not worth it for them. Now, for you as a powerlifter or weightlifter or someone who wants to get really, really strong for a single, it could be worth it to be strong, to eventually be able to demonstrate your strength in 1 rep. But the more times that you essentially roll the dice with 1RMs, the more times you have to get relatively seriously hurt or at least get nagging injuries. So if you 1 rep max way too often, it starts to be a question of balance. Are the benefits, of which there's some, are they really outweighing the cost, which could be injury, which is a really, really big cost. So what are some alternatives? If we're saying it's not a good idea to test 1RMs all the time, what's a good alternative? Well, first of all, if you really want to test maxes, do rep maxes at the end of that phase for that phase's rep range to try to see if you're better at that phase. So for example, if you're doing a hypertrophy phase and you're working in the squat with maybe 365 pounds or so for sets of 6 to 8, at the end of that hypertrophy phase, on your last microcycle, take an AMRAP, right, or as many reps as possible, get spotters, and put 365 or 385 on the bar and gut it out. If your last time that you did 385 months ago was 7, and this time you got 11 reps, my God, you definitely have more muscle, and almost certainly it's going to transition to more strength. So now you're testing, but you're testing the appropriate thing. If you're doing sets of 3, sets of 5 with 400 pounds, test with around 400 pounds at the end of that phase, and then you're really good to go. If you do test like that, make sure you're doing it as part of a workout. So some people will have like really productive workouts and they'll have a deload waiting over here, and their last workout, they'll just do an AMRAP, they'll call it, and they'll go home and start deloading. Well, you missed an opportunity to functionally overreach. So here's the really shitty advice I'm going to give you. It sucks, but it works. As soon as you hit your AMRAP, take a couple minutes of break, and then do more sets on top of that. Now, they can just be 1 or 2 reps short of failure. Good stimulus. Put in more volume as the phase demands. So your AMRAP, don't go home after that thing. It's a good test. Hey, you got stronger, you got bigger, great. Let's keep putting in the work and then deload after. So add more sets. Another way to do it, you don't necessarily have to AMRAP, and a lot of individuals who are very high level, very strong, too many AMRAPs are really very, very fatiguing, and there's some injury risk involved, right? If you're Chad Wesley Smith or somebody super strong, not me, if you're like AMRAPing 800, who the hell is going to save you if you don't make the 8.5 rep? I mean, no one. You're going to die or something like that. You're going to have to dump the bar. It's going to be terrible. So AMRAPs might not be for you, or if you're injury risk averse, or if you're just really logical, really focused on your plan, you don't need constant feedback all the time, why don't you just go up to your normal 3x5, 5x5, whatever your block ends with, perform to your best abilities, 1 rep from failure, 2 rep, whatever, hit your program goals, then check back to see if you're getting stronger. Easy. So if you hit 300 pounds for 5x5 6 months ago, and this time you hit 330 for 5x5, that's a PR. You're doing great. There's no need to test your 1RM because of course you got stronger, right? There's no way around that. Last word of advice, be logical, be intelligent about your programming. Don't do things on impulse and because you're worried. A lot of the reason people do 1 rep maxes, you guys have seen this out of maybe yourself and definitely your training partners, where they're like, well, yeah, hypertrophy's going well. I need a 1 rep. I need to max out. Why? I gotta know if I'm getting weaker. I feel like I'm getting weaker. It's nonsense. It's insanity. If you have a logically structured plan, you shouldn't have to worry about those things. And especially if you're doing AMRAPs or best efforts, you'll know that you're progressing. You're supposed to be. You can keep your 1 rep max stuff for the meet or for the weeks before, when it's best, when it's safest, when it's the best use of your time, so you can get the best program possible and actually continue to get strong instead of worry about how strong you are at all times. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys next time. As a PhD of sport physiology, a professor of nutrition, and the head science consultant for Renaissance Periodization, it was very important for me to be part of the design process of a supplement that I could really support, not only with the fact that it would be effective in the real world, but that it would be scientifically valid. When I helped as the main designer for the ingredients of Grind supplements, we made sure that all the supplements had only research-backed ingredients that definitely worked or definitely worth your money. There's no magic, there's no gimmicks, there's no bunk. I'm Dr. Mike Israetel, and I'm on my grind.